Well, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the Botanic Gardens for the last event of what's turned out to be a strange old birthday year, hasn't it? I'm Genevieve Jacobs. I'm currently the Group Editor at Region Media, and it's been my great pleasure to be a champion for the Gardens this year and an ambassador. And we had many plans and many ideas afoot for how the 50th anniversary would turn out. But of course, the world and Mother Nature had other ideas as it turned out. But nature also teaches us endurance and nurture, and that in caring for the land and all its living things, the seasons will turn. I thought about this time last December, when the smoke was beginning to edge over the mountains and we were starting to broadcast about the terrible fires that were creeping and then roaring through the forests. The ground crackled beneath our feet and the world felt very ominous last summer. A threat that was fulfilled in truly awful magnitude as the black summer wore on, edging ever closer to us here in Canberra and bringing death to places that so many of us love very deeply. It's a summer that marked us all, even while here in this green haven, nurture and care and good gardening of every kind continued with steady dedication. But here we are today, and the world is soft and green around us. I truly feel that this wet season is a healing balm. It's a blessing in every sense for our bruised and battered hearts. So this December, instead of that frightening curl of black smoke edging over the horizon to the east, we're watching instead slow miracles of new life unfurl. Soft new leaves, blooms, baby birds, lizards hatching, new pink bark beneath the old. It is a season of grace and of bounty. It's really been my honour to be a champion for the Gardens in this anniversary year. And it's made me think a great deal more than perhaps I'd anticipated that it would about the role of this place and its deep value at every level. And I thank the Gardens and Judy West for that gift to me, for that opportunity. And so we come today to another sign of hope, the reopening of the Banksia Centre, a renewed commitment, if you will, to these quintessentially beautiful Australian blooms. And if you look closely, you will also notice them on this gorgeous linen coat, specially commissioned for the occasion. This is the Banksia kimono. You'll hear shortly from Tammy Fraser, one of this country's great gardeners and generous souls. And her message will draw together some of the threads of the centre's past with its future. So as Christmas comes, and with it green lawns and wet days, and I don't begrudge wet weather for a single moment this year, and perhaps brings with it some renewed hope for next year, let's celebrate being here together at the Gardens and here at the Banksia Centre, where the links go back all the way to that buccaneering botanist Joseph, who also went forth bravely into a new world and found curiosity and beauty and good things in it. That's my hope for us for 2021. It's my pleasure now to introduce the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, Mr Andrew Metcalfe.
Well, thank you very much, Genevieve, and thank you for the lovely words this morning, and thank you for all you do for the Gardens and indeed for the broader Canberra community. We really do appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin this morning by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today and to pay my respects to their elders past and present. It's extraordinary to think that Indigenous Australians have been on this land for at least 60,000 years, and the knowledge and the wisdom that they bring to an understanding of our landscapes, our climates, is something that we should all value, we should all greatly respect. Can I very warmly welcome here this morning the Acting Director of National Parks, James Larson, who's a Deputy Secretary in my department, Judy West, Director of the Gardens, the Garden staff, the Friends of the Gardens, Neville and your colleagues who've done so much for the Gardens, and invited guests. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this new reopening of the Banksia Centre here today. It's always lovely to be here in the gardens. It's a lovely, cool summer's day. Where I live, just over the border out at Sutton, we had some further rain last night, and the landscape, as Genevieve says, is just so different to where we were 12 months ago. This is a very special place. It's a very special year in this wonderful national institution, being, of course, its 50th anniversary. I very much remember coming here as a child, visiting from Queensland, and probably being here about that year the gardens opened, I think. And even back then, just the wonder of the rainforest gully and what was to become, of course, this extraordinary collection of Australian plants from right across our continent. Today, indeed, these gardens are the largest collection of Australian native plants in the world. We attract over 500,000 people here every year, and they all come here to appreciate and value our unique Australian flora. But as everyone knows, back in January this year, off the back of the terrible bushfires that ravaged so much of the country, we of course had a terrible hailstorm as well. There was a large amount of damage done to this centre, and indeed other buildings. There's a swathe that was cut across from here, across the university. It impacted many of the staff of our department who work in Marcus Clark Street. It continued across the lake. It destroyed cars and buildings on the way, and indeed very much impacted on the other departmental building in the John Gorton building. The gardens took the opportunity following that terrible storm to fully refurbish this centre inside and out, and it's really looking wonderful today. I'd like to acknowledge the creativity and hard work of those who've been involved in the repair and the refurbishment works. I've actually had the opportunity to have a couple of sneak peeks at the centre over the course of the year. Indeed, we had a very good meeting with colleagues from Charles Sturt University here a few weeks ago, and the centre, I think, demonstrate its flexibility, its adaptability to hosting many different types of events. And of course, the garden staff have been very busy developing the adjoining Banksia Garden over behind you there, that was recently opened by the Minister for the Environment, Susan Lee. The Friends of the Gardens provided the majority of the funding for the new garden, and again I just want to thank you for your work, not only this year but in all the years, to do so much to support the gardens on the 50th anniversary this year. It's a wonderful circle of history that the Banksia Centre was originally officially opened in 1982 by Mrs Tammy Fraser. I think the plaque, which is a bit of a sign of the times, refers to her at that point as Mrs Malcolm Fraser. But Tammy Fraser played a significant role in suggesting that a centre be developed for horticultural training for people with disabilities. The Banksia Centre later expanded its role to become the primary education and learning centre for the gardens. And wonderfully, all those years later, Mrs Fraser is still an enthusiastic supporter of the gardens. Unfortunately, she can't be here, but we will be able to view her through a pre-recorded message shortly. The two rooms within the Banksia Centre have now been named in tradition of honouring significant botanists. The Celia Rossa room, which is directly behind me, is named after the Australian botanical artist Celia Rossa. She was one of only two women who has a species of Banksia named in her honour, Banksia rossae. Some of Celia's work can be seen on display in the Celia Rossa room today. And the Daniel Solander room is named after the significant Swedish botanist who worked with Sir Joseph Banks on James Cook's Endeavour voyage to Australia and the Pacific. They collected the first specimens of Banksia at Botany Bay in 1770, 250 years ago. Banksia solandri is named in honour of Daniel Solander. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure to be here with you today. I'm just absolutely delighted that we're now able to reopen the renewed, the refurbished Banksia Centre. I congratulate everyone who's been involved and look very much forward to being part of the ceremony as we go forward through this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Secretary Metcalfe. You know, I often reflect here in Canberra that we are so much closer to the bush than any other city, and so for all of us, a good year and a good bank of moisture in the soil is something that's a very resonant message indeed. I'd like to now welcome the Director of the Botanic Gardens, the Australian National Botanic Gardens, Judy West, whose anniversary year has been perhaps a little trickier than she was anticipating, a little more fraught, but she has emerged magnificently from it, guiding the gardens through this very difficult time to this beautiful point at which we now find ourselves. Please make Judy West very welcome.
Thanks very much, Genevieve. I'm not sure that I've emerged well from it. It's been a pretty heavy-going year, so I agree. But I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, and obviously the elders past and present. And I'd like to thank the Secretary, Andrew, thank you very much for your words and for being here and joining us today. And also thank James Arson, our Deputy Secretary and Acting Director of National Parks, for being with us as well. Also like to thank Genevieve for being obviously Master of Ceremonies today, but we've had her as our champion for the year, for the celebratory year, and we've had very little opportunity for her to be with us in those times. But also thank you to the project team and all that have done the work in terms of getting this refurbishment. Peter Byron led a lot of the developments that have happened here over the time earlier when at lockdown, particularly when most of this happened, which was a good opportunity for the gardens to be able to do that. And obviously thanks everyone to being here today, and those that are virtually with us as well, because this is being streamed as well. I think you'll find that it's a much improved building, and I think it looks pretty good, but anyway, you see what you feel when you have a look inside. So the last couple of months we've been able to celebrate some of the things that we were intending to do during the year. And we've had obviously a celebration for the staff and how they've been working for all this time. And as the Secretary said, our Minister Susan Lee opened the Banksia Garden behind us late in October. And so now we're reopening the Banksia Centre here, learning and education today. So the Gardens has run a fairly well-established education program for nearly 30 years, and this building has been the hub of that since Tammy Fraser opened it in 1982. And the education programs provide students really with of all ages, but with the opportunity to be able to deep connections between people, plants and animals, and sort of that general inquiry and hands-on learning experiences of various sorts that we've developed. So it's no wonder really that we've had about 15,000 students a year coming through the gardens. We'd like to see it more, but we're trying. And it's really been very pleasing in the last few months having the young ones around, trooping around the gardens. They're just fantastic to watch, and they seem to love walking around in their little pairs, and they're very organised. It's very encouraging. But we've started off with a new gardens education strategy this year that has been developed, and that's encouraging us and I think teachers around Australia that will be in a different range, and it gives us much more scope, obviously, to be able to involve teachers around the country and beyond our local and regional schools involved. And that's one of the things that we're looking at. The online package that we're looking at will be probably available mid-year. We'll start working with another department in Commonwealth Government. So that is going to concentrate on, I don't say Australian plants, but on plant sciences and the life cycles of Australian plants. So it's quite an interesting focus for us to take in this first round. Obviously, the new developments that we're also focusing on this next year is going to be a busy year for us. The National Conservatory and Potter National Conservatory is, and I want to acknowledge that the Ian Potter Foundation has actually provided more funding for that in the last month. So that is a fantastic contribution from them and recognition of what we're doing here. They've got total confidence in us, so that's good. And the other is the National Seed Bank. Both of those will become part of the education programs in various ways. So once the formalities are over, this morning I'd like to invite you obviously to come and have a look at the Banksia and the Daniel Solander studio, where there's some students around, I think somewhere. There's little ones around. To see what you think about this refurbished building. But I'd now like to facilitate the official reopening of this Banksia Centre by presenting a very special message from Tammy Fraser, who officially opened the building, as the Secretary said, in 1982. It's obviously a pity that she's not with us today, but I think this little video will do the trick.
I was 39 when I opened the Banksia Centre. Just a kid.
The new gardens will cater for all disabled people, both mentally and physically.
The National Botanic Gardens were a very original idea in the first place because we had nothing in Australia that represented Australian fauna and flora. And people didn't understand, even in the 50s, what a garden made of Australian plants could possibly look like. When I originally opened it, it was for horticultural training for people with disabilities. I'd hoped that the gardens would put in place areas where the plant were set in beds which were a lot higher than ordinary beds, so that you could access them in a wheelchair and enjoy flowers. And this was the National Botanic Gardens' way of doing this. People have it in them to enjoy nature in all its glory. I think children even pick out things that adults never see. And the Banksia Centre is a very good place for children to come and explore and understand their Australian natural environment. 15 to 25,000 kids have gone through the Banksia Centre a year, and I think that's a huge number, and I do hope it goes on to bigger and better successes. It's a constant for people who are interested in gardening and plants to have an interesting discussion with people they've never met before. Anything that can twig anyone's interest, I think, is a good thing. Thank you very much to the National Botanical Gardens for inviting me to be with you today. I'm so sorry I can't be there in person. I would now like to officially open the new refurbished Banksia Centre.
I'd like to just show you the plaque that we've been developed to go up. This time it says Mrs Tammy Fraser. You're right, it's a sign of the times. And she was the one who actually, when Peter had a discussion with her recently, she said, the name this time won't be Mrs Tammy Fraser, will it? She's on the ball. So this will go outside at the front entrance of this building, just beside the other one, the old one. But thank you very much. I'd also like to just do something else. Some flowers from us, from the gardens, for everything you've done for us for this year.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic.
Yes, they are. Oh, that's great. That's very unexpected. Thank you very much indeed. I was just sitting there thinking, gosh, Tammy is wonderful, isn't she?
Yeah.
And she's just somebody who is warm and forthright and intelligent and emotionally connected and understands what it takes to nurture people and plants, to nurture the environment and to nurture community together. She's a really remarkable human being, and I'm very sorry too that she's not able to be here with us. But I think this year has brought us many firsts, among them launching buildings from Victoria. I'd like to thank Judy West very much indeed this morning, Secretary Metcalfe, for your kind and thoughtful words, Mrs Fraser, of course, and it is now time for morning tea, but please thank Judy, Tammy and Andrew very warmly. And I would like you to have a cuppa, mingle, have a wander and enjoy this beautiful place and this beautiful season. Thank you so much.